Hey, thanks everybody for coming today. Thanks for the PNBOA referees and aren't evaluators for showing up too, and you're going to get meeting credit, so if you didn't sign in, sign in. This is being recorded by Chuck Orelli, so if any of our evaluators didn't show up today, they can get the link once we figure out how we're going to get them the link. Same thing, we'll be putting it on the PNBOA website, so varsity officials and registered officials can see this, see what we're teaching the evaluators, so it's not a mystery of what you guys are being taught or discussing. So we already kind of throwing around the evaluation form, the new one, and we'll talk about that as we go through this meeting. But I want to introduce our presenter today, Penny Davis. She is a former SOWB PNBOA referee, and her job now is the national coordinator of women's basketball officiating for the entire US of A. She's responsible for assigning all of the officials to the NC2A tournaments. And it's really fun to see somebody that was in our training class not too many years ago rise to the level of success that Penny has. So without further ado, Penny Davis.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back.
Appreciate that. Yeah, so
Feel alone.
apprentice training 1997, so product of that, and happy to be back in the Pacific Northwest and still being a part of this organization. I think it's really important to look back and know where your roots are and to stay connected when you can. So anyway, I'm the actual officials liaison for the observers liaison for the PNBOA. So that supersedes, I've had that position before the national coordinator position. So y'all have a longer tenure there. So anyway, we're going to go through the new form, and Scott shared with me that he and his committee were really invested in updating the form to new terminology to be current with the current officiating standards and language, and to hopefully make it a more effective tool for evaluating our officials. So we're going to dive into that, and you all have a copy. I know you can't see that, but similar in length. Maybe the print has changed to a smaller font in some areas, but there's some really good details. So we're going to dive into each of the sections. Of course, it's always important to accurately fill out the game evaluation date, your information, whether it's a JV or varsity game, boys or girls, so on and so forth. And then number one, the appearance section, pretty standard stuff that's been in there previously, but you'll see that's worth 5 points, or 5% of 100, so it's 5 points. And then there's 5 sections, so it's either a 0 or a 1 in each of those first boxes. So there's 5 things. You can put a 0 or a 1 there, and then you can subtotal it. And we'll update the evals.org website that tracks all the information to match these categories. So, if somebody's not the fastest of foot and they're not getting in position for plays, then they're going to get a 0, but they're probably not going to get a 0 for that entire category. So we've got some very specific things that we're going to track on there. Game management is 20%. We have 4 categories, and so it's 1 through 5 in each of those boxes. And we talk about excellence versus above average, average or needs improvement, and no one should get a 0 or probably a 1 in those. It's probably going to be a 2 through 5 essentially for these categories. If we didn't have any scenarios like the last one with properly handles disqualified players, we have a little typo there with 2 S's, and technical fouls. If we didn't have any of those situations in a game, then it's a 5. So we're going to give the official the benefit of the doubt that they would have known how to handle that situation. We're not going to give them a 0 because it didn't occur. We're going to give them a 5. And I think that will work out as we really go finite into each of the categories. And so demonstrates good dead ball officiating. In addition to that, how well are they facilitating the game? That's what we're looking for there. Awareness of game and shot clocks, especially at critical times. Is the timer stopping the clock properly? Did they catch any errant resets with the game clock or shot clock? And then managing coaches, players, and subs, following the proper guidelines. So this is all about the game management portion, and if there are questions for each of these sections, please bring them forward as we're in that section so we don't get too far ahead. Is this a good pace? Okay, thank you. Rules and mechanics, 15%. So 15 points total for this category. There's 5 categories, and if we do basic math, that's 1 through 3, right? So you can get up to 3 in each of the sections. Proper pregame procedures. So we obviously need to be there, making sure that, you know, the crew chief's going to the book, they're standing in the right position, they facilitate the captain's meeting if that is appropriate for COVID protocols. Same with the coaches meeting. So those are the things we're looking for there. Understand and consistently apply NFHS rules and mechanics. I think that should be worth probably 15 points all in of itself, but it's 1 through 3. So, you know, if they're not properly, you know, reporting, if they're walking and talking and doing the college mechanics and not running up to the reporting area, stopping, presenting their information to the scorers table, they're not going to get 3 points for that. So there's a lot of places where they could lose a point in the proper rules and mechanics section. So keep that in mind. We have jump ball throw-ins, proper throw-in spots, proper procedures. You know, if they're tossing the ball to the player and not doing the appropriate hand in and you know, this thing, if they're just doing the college thing and chopping time, that's not appropriate for NFHS. So those are the things you're going to look for there. Rotating with a purpose throughout the game. You know, that one is, you know, if you see places where they're deficient and their rotations, you know, they're going to get less than 3 in that category. Appropriate position, coverage during press and transition. You know where they're supposed to be in press coverage, so keep that in mind as well. So that's the rules and mechanics section. Probably could be worth a lot more, frankly, but we get into that more detail later as we dive into court positioning. So one thing we realize that, you know, as you make changes, we need to collaborate. It's a work in process, and there is a small error on this one. We put too many boxes at the side, so routinely, if you would just take your pen and color in the first box and not use that space, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, and we have 6 boxes. So these are all going to be worth up to 3 or 4 points, and we're going to adjust this basically. So the first, at least 3 of these are going to be worth 1 through 4, because the math works better that way. Follow me? And Scott, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's really the way we're going to do it. If I didn't already have these in production, we could fix it going forward. But just so we figure out how to score that, as a group today, we'll figure out what we want to do so we're not willy-nilly doing it. But as long as it adds up to 18% at the end of the day, I think we're okay. Basically, I counted up the 6 boxes there, even though there's only 5 lines of verbiage. So that, because the second line is part of the first line. So. And maybe the thing is it's 3 points as a baseline. Everybody gets first 3. Yeah. So we can put a 3 in that first box, and then everything else is still 1 through 3. Think of it that way.
Jeremy's got a question. Just real quick, the thing that stood out, that jumped out to me, I totally missed the 2 in the boxes thing, but that was a position adjust appeared in two different parts of this. So I'm thinking maybe strike it from the top one since it's got its own spot.
Since it's here number 3.
Right, and it also appears in number 1. Position adjust. So I was thinking we could strike it off of number 1. Since it's got its own thing, and then maybe just bump up the point value. Just a thought.
Great piece of feedback. We'll take that under consideration. Thank you. So yeah, as we go through this proper position and position adjust to see and maintain looks for the entire play. You know, if we're not in proper position and getting open looks and we're blowing the whistle, that means we're guessing because we didn't see the play. So we want to be in the right spot there. Recognizes, initiates, and responds to a 3-person rotation. if they're not rotating the strong side as the lead, that's a big cue, so they're not going to get the full 3 points in that area. Position just to obtain and maintain open angles. You know, that maybe is more within the individual position. Now, once we get into trail, we're working to maintain those open looks. Demonstrates consistency and appropriate on-ball, off-ball coverage. And lastly, does not ball watch, exhibits consistent, appropriate off-ball coverage. So we know there's a little work we need to do. The forms aren't going to change because they are printed, but we will, Scotty?
So I'm going to try to go by Staples today and see if I can halt production on that form so we can tweak it. So hopefully the one I get when I mail out the 2-parters when we get them, we'll have that adjusted. So if not, I know we can all work around it.
Thank you. Yes, we can be flexible. We've been pivoting and working around things for the last 2 years like champs, right? Play calling, big area of our evaluations, worth 27% or 27 points. And again, it's 1 through 3 in each of these categories to be consistent, and there are 7 categories, so we nailed that part of it. But appropriate calls from each position on the court, lead, center, and trail. Demonstrate, start, develop, finish, basically letting plays develop and seeing them the whole way through, and then making a decision when the play is in their primary. Proper application of ball handler, defender, and freedom of movement. So it's more of POE enforcement guideline plays with calling hand checking, calling displacement. Application of post play, proper application of screens, proper application of verticality. You know, again, if we don't really have any plays that involve screening that, rise to the level of a foul, or they've not misapplied, not enforced, or just didn't have that situation, are they looking off ball and covering this properly? If it's just an offense that didn't use a lot of screens and it didn't present itself in that game, they get 3. So we're not looking to, again, take away points if it's not at all necessary. And then penalize non-basketball plays, differentiates between physical and rough play, recognize and calls first foul, not retaliation. A lot of game management things within there, and then makes like-minded crew calls, engaged in double whistles when appropriate. So those are the play calling examples. And there may be something that doesn't purely fit into those categories. And if that's the case, try to find an application. And, if there's a reason for a deduction, make the deduction just because that scenario didn't perfectly match the language on that form. We want to fairly credit and fairly evaluate the officials if there are those situations. Communication. So 5 categories here, and 1 through 3, same deal. And basic communication things, I'm not going to read through those. I think you guys can get to know this part of the form on your own. And then lastly, the forms, because we are going through the whole new process, it's just always good as we get to the end of the season for you to collect all your forms, put them in an envelope, send them to me, or, I love not paper, very digital, so if you want to scan these and throw them in a PDF, whatever your level of comfort and technology is, we can make that work, and there's a way to upload them just through the Dropbox, and they end up right in a nice folder for me. This would be now my #1 preference. You can email them to me, and then lastly the paper option, and that's just good. Like I said, if we happen to miscalculate somewhere and the officials got their copy, and now all of a sudden they're like, on the website it said I got a 3 for my appearance and fitness. I actually got a 4 according to this sheet. I can go to your sheet that you sent me or took a picture of. We can work it out, and we don't have to follow back up and deal with the angst. And not had really many of those situations, but it's a good kind of CYA system. So that's that. And then just kind of a reminder on our scoring. and where we've been previously. These are the two averages, 92 for girls varsity, boys. And there were years where our numbers started to get up 94, 95, and there was such a small difference between the number 1 official and the number 30 official, like 100 or 200ths of a point. And that's really not a good place for us as an organization. I think us being mindful of our scoring, I think we should really end up being, between 85 and 90. And as we get above the 90, there's not really a lot of room for people to go. So, it's probably easy to just write 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 down the line, but that's not being effective as evaluators and doesn't help the organization. And not that we're trying to, ding our officials, so to speak, but, we want to help make them better and be really specific. And these forms give some really good specifics, and your comments associated with those areas is really important as well. So I know maybe it's a few more things to put on this sheet for those referees, but it's really important. And frankly, I've said this before in these meetings, I feel like my success as an official when I first started had a whole lot to do with the observation program, and that it wasn't a peer or evaluation and purely a coordinator. I really believe in this program, from varsity officials evaluating the registered officials to the services that this program has for the varsity officials as well. So it's really important, and here's the history, and we've made good strides to get back to a better, comfortable place, but just because we're changing this doesn't mean we should now have skyrocketed scores. So keep that in mind. Have a good eye out there. And then your portal, when you sign in, if you're new, which I don't know that we have any brand new people in the room.
We don't have any in the room, but we have new evaluators this year.
So there's a registration process, there's an approval process, which I do. If you are a brand new official, you need to register so that your name shows up in the drop-down list for the varsity officials when they evaluate you to pick your name. So it's really important that everyone goes to evals.org and registers there as brand new officials or brand new observers. And as you enter your scores, there is an accumulation that shows up on your homepage, so you kind of know where your average is, your personal scoring average. And there's a whole interpolation process at the end of the year for the whole pool of evaluators, but that will be where your personal average is for your totals. And there's the registration, again, evals.org, and to sign in.
So Penny, I have a question. We do have one of our top-level varsity officials that is now going to be an evaluator this year. Mm-hmm. So does he have to do anything different other than sign up as an observer versus an official? They
will just sign up as an observer,
okay.
And then, and then I approve them as an observer. And so they will have 2 sign-ins, but okay. It works seamlessly. And if they, roll back in the future to being an official, then we'll just adjust that.
Okay.
And I've always pointed this out. You put in the date, you put in the location, and then you select the 3 officials. The order that you select them in doesn't transfer over to this sheet. It goes into alphabetical order. So you may have picked Scott first, Doug second, and Dave third, but you'll see it's Augustavo, Federley, then Miller. So as you're doing the columns and entering scores, we want to make sure we're entering the scores for the proper official. And a lot of people don't bother to update their photo to put that in there, but if they did, that would make it easier. And these, again, will be adjusted to match the new form on the Observer site. And then you get your scores, and that's that. Any questions on that process from anyone?
I'm going to say one more thing here, just to make sure everybody understands. My committee, or myself, has 0 access to any scores. So we don't have anything to do with the way the list looks at the end of the year. That's all Penny. So I just want to make sure everybody hears that I don't ever see a score when you guys turn stuff in. The only time I see it at the end of the year, we got a list, and I see all the officials' averages. And that's all done by Penny. So just want to make that clear.
Great point. Yeah. Very true.
I have one thought, Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
at least and I'd like to know how everybody else feels. Sometimes I watch a game, and if it's two inner city teams, you know, that game is a very, very competitive game versus two teams that don't know each other and they play a clean game and the guys end up getting a good evaluation versus, or gals, versus somebody that works a tough freaking game when there's two inner city teams or two teams that don't like each other. I don't know, at least in my understanding, if those two compare versus the people that work a game and nothing ever happens in the game. I think it's a little bit extra for those folks to what they bring to the table in managing that game. If that makes sense to anybody at all?
Yes.
Okay.
The form doesn't,
No.
and the process doesn't equate for, you got that, Chuck?
I don't have a long neck.
There you go, there you go. Little Blair Witch Project for you watching at home. Yeah, this process doesn't necessarily account for game difficulty.
Good, okay,
And,
thanks.
and we've all been out there, we all know, you know, there are some really challenging games where, gosh, if you can nail a challenging game, you should get
Okay.
some bonus points. Unfortunately, that's not part of the process, so hopefully, you know, if you're evaluated, you're not always evaluated on those really challenging moments, and you get maybe a lollipop type of situation, so, but point very well received, and
Yeah, and I just want to make sure we're all thinking the same, so we at least have some consistency. Again, and I appreciate what you've done in terms of the form and everything, but I always like to make sure that we're all consistent in what our scores are, because I know the officials come back themselves and say, hey, I got one guy and he or she was this way, I got another person and he or she is this way, so I just want to kind of throw that
which
out.
I think too, the whole process of, you know, well, gosh, you know, Penny's a really tough grader, and you know, Mike is a really easy grader, so gosh, you know, do I want Mike, or do I really want the positive feedback and the thing that's gonna help me grow, or do I just want the high score? And you know, that's where I think the interpolation process really helps to level things out. And then also the point of, you know, we throw out a score, and you know, we drop that low, and so there's some things in the system process that I think that help facilitate some of those matters of circumstance.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Well, there's 2 points. Just to feed off that, that's probably the biggest thing I heard from officials was, well, you know, later on in life, you know, it's like, well, God, you only gave me a 92 last year, and it's like, I got 100 from so-and-so, and it's like, well, nobody in my game's ever got 100.
Oh, really?
So, you know, so that I heard several times, and then to kind of go off of your comment with the difficulty of the game, I think you're gonna have, there's gonna be 1 or 2 officials that get maybe 10 of those games because they do manage those games, whereas somebody maybe new to the varsity list isn't gonna work that inner city game. So, but yet they're still doing the things they need to do. So, I mean, I think you take that into account when,
Yeah, if I never got that marquee matchup, I can't show you what I could have done.
yes.
And that's not fair either, so there's, yeah. And another question here?
Okay, I'll just change it, Penny, I'll take care of that. No, I do one thought, though, and I don't know about this, but I looked last year, and I was one that did work a game because of COVID, and a lot of guys had. Do they have any type of, kind of like, first few games, get people warm back up to it? I mean, because, you know, I want to do some kids' games just to kind of feel it again, you know?
I think John would take your availability instantly for yeah. Big fella, you're a good American, and yeah, I think that makes sense, and you know, I mean, just express that. I'm sure the organization would welcome that feedback, and you know.
But I'm thinking as an observer, you know, I mean, I get it, you got to fill out the form for you. Bang, it doesn't matter, you know, first game in 1 year, or first game last week, you know.
Yeah, there's no, oh, you know, okay, yeah, that's Penny, she hasn't worked in 2 years, oh, okay, I take it easy on her. You know, you get your assignments, and, you know, it doesn't matter if it's first game of the season or the last game, you gotta try to be ready.
I think kind of what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a form that has a lot more specificity. As a result, I think it's more transparent, which is great, but also it takes away a little bit of a gray area where in past years maybe an observer might have accounted for, man, this is a tough game, these guys did a bang-up job. Or something like, hey, you know, this guy looks like he's just getting back into it or something like that. So was that sort of the intent behind laying it out?
A little bit, but I know that most evaluators are still going to take into consideration, whether it's written on the form or not, what kind of game that was,
Okay.
that was just officiated. That's the only way I can think of answering that question.
Yeah.
I know what to
Because-
do with those 3 points.
Huh?
Let's take those 3 points. If it's an easy game, it's 1 point. If it's mediocre, it's average, it's 2 points. If it's a hard, challenging game, it's 3 points.
That's,
You know, that might be a good solution.
That's-
End up 200, right?
that's not a bad idea.
I like it. I like
Bad
it.
idea, because we
Just
all
a
know,
thought. Okay.
we all know that, I'm just gonna pick a game. The Garfield Franklin
There you
game might be a little more challenging than Kent Lake Kentwood. I know because I worked both those games
Right.
last year. But you still have to do the mechanics, you still gotta do all the things, but when you're doing a Metro game, I'm just gonna say this, you're in survival mode. You might not get your hand up every time on an out of bounds call. You're trying to keep players from fighting, and you're trying to keep the game going, or the game safe. And it's a different game, but I think every single person we've hired as an evaluator, they know that. Because they're most of the people that are evaluating for us have refereed at a high level for a really long time. A lot of people in this room that are evaluators are former Division I officials, and they know the difference. So I think we can work through that, but I like Penny's idea
I like
on
that
adding it to the form. So,
I like things that add up.
yeah, I agree with you. And I'm an accountant, I can't figure out why I did that.
All right, so let's move on. Great feedback. Love the conversation. At the bottom of the login page is a form for feedback, and this is to be used if there are issues or concerns, maybe something that doesn't rise to the level of an official grievance. So, you know, we've had maybe a handful of these things come in where we've been able to, you know, just get in front of something before it turns into a bigger matter, or we're able to alleviate things. It's not been used a lot, but that link is there, and it just creates an official record of something, whether it's an incident, something in a post game, a locker room, and that can come from the observer or an official. So just keep in mind we have this feedback loop, and this comes to me, and I have some discretion in how I handle that. It's led to a phone call or two and a little research to resolve the matter. So we have that process in place. That's the form, the evaluation process. Now I want to get into some of the work we actually do and talk some referee and stuff. So our rule changes, and I know a lot of people didn't referee or there weren't a lot of games last year, so I've got both from last year's NFHS materials and this year. So we're going to go into those. One of the big things, if you've read the materials, is adoption of shot clock. It's a permissive rule for other states. Washington's been ahead of the game, so nothing there for us to be concerned about. Team members' equipment and apparel, in particular, handling situations with, we've got headwear or religious head coverings. In our world of everyone growing more cognizant of diversity, equity, inclusion, our rules haven't always matched up with that. They're there now, and essentially those things have been approved as long as they're non-abrasive, no hard materials. They can't be attached with a dozen bobby pins because that is the violation of dangerous and hard, and if they're concealing it and there's a bobby pin there holding things on, we don't want our referees going to look for it, but if it looks like a Christmas tree and is sparkling and shining, then we're in different realms. So we want to use common sense. We don't want to create unnecessary conflict around these matters. The thing can't slip off. That's the other thing that they note in their concerns, but these things are approved and they don't need to have a waiver from the state association or anyone else. Signals. This will be fun to watch some people adjust to this. Our player control and team control signal is back to hand behind the head and pointing. No longer just the punch on that. Basically, they said that we had both signals in place before, and we don't need two signals for the same thing. So again, this is what we're doing for our offensive foul, player control fouls, and team control fouls.
So it's both at one time.
Well, you're gonna stop clock and then,
All right, okay.
Okay.
did I do that all right?
Yeah.
Stop clock.
Coordination's okay.
Stop clock.
Right.
Yeah. Well, some people might go here or here. We still need to stop clock because we can have a double whistle.
It is.
Okay.
So we want to go here first,
Yes.
every single time, fundamental, and then here. Great. This was something from 2 years ago with our timers, duties, and the warning horns. So timer sounds a warning horn at the start of the 15-second interval to replace a disqualified player, and at the end of the 15-second interval. We want both horns unless the sub's already in the game, but that if they haven't provided that sub before that second horn, then the consequence is a technical foul to the head coach. Is that a comment? Okay.
Is that a pretty hardcore rule if the kids get up to come in?
Well, you want, no, if they're on their way, that's fine. They don't have to be right at the X. They just need to be coming into the game, you know. And basically, we've already gone through the process of called the foul, we've reported it, tables communicated that, we let our partners know, we let the player know, we let the coach know. Now we start the time. We get a first horn, and we're standing there waiting, right? If they're not showing any motion, and by that time, hopefully the coach has already started their facilitation, and you know, usually they have a few wise words of information for that player coming into the game.
Or you.
Or you, yeah. But hey, come on, let's go. We need that sub. We need that sub. If no one is on their way to the table, then and the horn goes, then that is a technical foul.
Well, and I think what I see a lot in that situation is they kind of use it as a mini timeout, so that all of the other players come over, the four that are still in. The fifth may be standing in that huddle because the coach is trying to call a play, but he hasn't technically checked in, but he's still in that group. So once that second horn goes, then...
And the official that's standing there waiting should be facilitating that. We need you to check in, and once they check in, we're ready to go. So, I mean, 15 seconds isn't a very long time for that, but we do need to go through the proper procedures when we do have a disqualification and make sure we're telling everybody that we need to tell, and then starting that time. And that audio cue of that's 5. That's not the first horn when the timer might do that, right? Because if we didn't know it was 5 and we walk away, we're about to start play. Hey Penny, that's 5. Okay, hang on. That's 5. Coach, that's 5. All right, start the time. We want to facilitate that. So that I think will help those matters. That's, I believe, what they had intended for that rule. They've got some things related to forfeiture, protest, interrupted game. If there's no coach available, there's some guidance on that. And anyone that, and I got a typo on my slide, any player, team member, or coach fails to comply with the technical foul penalty or makes a travesty of the game, then the officials have the authority to call it a no contest and end the game. So, you know, really rare situation, but that's one of the rule changes. Previously, the rule book said that a coach had to be warned before they got a technical foul. I think when they put the language in about the warnings and reporting the warning to the table, they maybe misstated some things. If there's an egregious act, we don't have to give a warning. It's not it's a courtesy, essentially. But if there is a major infraction, a technical foul can be the first course of action. You don't have to give a warning. So they have clarified that and cleaned that up. Points of emphasis for this season: mechanics and signals, timeout administration, unsporting conduct, screening, Euro step, spin move, jump stops, and traveling fundamentals. We're going to dive into those. Mechanics and signals: being fundamentally sound, using the proper mechanics, The stop clock is a big thing. We've got a lot of referees that are just boop, go straight to a travel, or boop, and just go straight to the punch. We have to get the fist up. This tells them to stop the clock. We want to be good with that sequence. That was one of the areas they noted specifically. All violations and all fouls, we want to stop the clock first. And, you know, the sequence there, stop clock, color number foul, and the restart. Where are we inbounding the ball? Are we shooting 2 shots? Are we shooting 1 shot? Communicating all of those things at the spot is part of that correct sequence. And same for a violation. Stop clock, signal the violation, communicate that, white ball, throw-ins right here on the sideline. Basic stuff. Learned that in apprentice training, 1997, hasn't changed. I don't know why officials have fallen off those fundamentals, but we sometimes do.
So can I ask a question?
Yes,
So one of the ones that are different is the held ball.
yes.
So Federation says raise your hand, and then, or we in Washington have not done that. We just came straight up. So we need to make sure we're consistent on that.
Okay. That is one of the concessions, much like we had shot clocks in our games previously. So yes, please make a note. Held ball, one exception, straight to the signal.
Hey Penny, I had
Yes.
something, this is maybe a little over the top, but if I look at the mechanics of the charge, I'm understanding we're gonna go here, and now we're going here, right? Okay, so what if I go here, here,
That's fine.
and here? Okay, I'm just trying to, because I'm not as coordinated as most of you folks. You know, my coordination's on, I know I got rhythm, but my coordination's on. So I'm just trying to work on it. Okay, thank you. Okay,
No punch.
okay.
Don't do the punch.
Don't do the punch. Okay, just,
Boom, boom, boom.
thank you.
I feel like,
Like 1902, when you used to do it.
Yeah, when you
Well,
start,
no, and I say that because some folks are better with one hand than they are with two.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at how this whole thing has evolved over the years, I mean, some folks, if we go here, here, and then we go here, it's easier for them versus, I mean, if I go up and I'm thinking I got to charge, okay, I got to do this, I'm all over the place. So anyway, thank you.
Well, and here's the end result.
Yeah.
What we don't want is this.
punch.
This is the thing that we don't want. So if somebody's got this, and this, that's fine too.
Right.
You know, don't be so literal because, you know, we've got an aging population of officials and frankly, somebody's got a shoulder issue. And you're gonna say, well, you know, you did this and then you did this, but you did this. And like, well, you know, and then we get into the whole like,
Okay.
if they got the 3 pieces together
Okay.
on that, that's perfectly fine. You know, we want to major in the majors, not major in the
Right,
minors.
okay, thank
Okay?
you.
I think the important thing, and Penny already said it, is fist up
Up
first.
First, right, of course.
And then not the punch. So
Punch,
fist
okay.
up, hand
And
behind the
behind
head, in that order, and
okay.
other than that,
Yep.
like clear communication. Stop clock, player or team control that. Which hand to do it with,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, well said, well
Thank
said. Good points and good
Thanks,
questions on that. Timeout administration. This is something we have seen, and we want to make sure that the player has player control before we're granting a timeout. And a loose ball, scrappy situation on the ground, kids diving everywhere, you know, we want to make sure there's actually a possession before we're granting a timeout. So the official that's standing right by the coach, and the coach is like, timeout, 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 blows the timeout without really knowing if there is possession. That's why this is a point of emphasis.
Okay.
So if they can't see that, they need to try to get into a position where they can. The official that's right on top of the play, refereeing the play, if they're able to recognize that. If we miss a timeout in that situation, so be it. Like, it's hard to figure out if there really is possession at the time when they've requested that. So we just can't give a timeout and give that possession if there's not really control by a player in that situation. So that's the point they're trying to make there. Unsporting,
Z, before you do that,
yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows, on the timeouts, so I think Joanne, Kevin, and I, we were fortunate enough to teach at a lot of camps this year, and we try to get it into their heads that there's no full timeout in high school basketball. it's a 60-second timeout, and it's like this, it's not like this, and it's not like this, right? 60-second timeout. This is not a 30-second timeout, this is a 30-second timeout. But we need to all talk that same language when we're going through these forums and coaching, teaching, and training, following up with our officials. Okay?
Yeah, good, Ed, appreciate that. Proper signals when reporting and calling timeouts, great. Unsporting conduct, very specific about certain areas here in their point of emphasis, but concerns by not just players, bench personnel, coaches and officials, but spectators, that was listed specifically. Specifically involving spectators, because sportsmanship is such a declining thing, and it's impacting how long people really stay in officiating, and it causes a lot of people to leave. So the NFHS is really focusing on having the game administration address unruly spectators who are involved in misconduct. So number one, the officials should check to see if that game administrator has dealt with or addressed that fan. And if they haven't, ask that game administrator to address that fan. And it need not be, this person needs to go, or this whole row needs to go. It needs to be, these people need to be handled, their actions are inappropriate, please deal with this, or we will have to do something else. And the last part is really the official having to make the choice to say, now they're ejected. But it's a step-by-step process, and it's really important that those things be followed in that way. And if we don't know who the game administrator is prior to arrival or upon arrival before the game starts, it makes it really difficult to identify them when we do have a situation. So again, that's part of pregame processes that we want to make sure the officials have addressed. And if you witness something like that in a game, one of our questions should be, did we identify the game administrator prior to the start of the game? Okay, yes you did, you didn't, okay, follow that through. And then the last piece of that is, when there are issues with spectators, those things need to be followed back up with the association. So calling the assigner, letting them know there's been an issue in this particular location so that they can try and handle and mitigate some of those things and keep it from being consistent behavior. Coaches, referees shouldn't take abuse, they shouldn't have to deal with inappropriate things. That's different than conflict in a game related to the game. There's a level of back and forth expect, and then there's some things that are over the top, and identifying where the difference is and managing that is really important. Warnings can be very effective, but we also need to have follow through after a warning has been given to a coach. If that misconduct continues and there's not a consequence, that is really problematic and doesn't enforce that POE. So officials, you're supported in addressing misconduct by coaches, fans, spectators, players. Enforce it. That's how we make changes in it moving forward, and do it professionally. They also talked about conduct in team huddles during timeouts. A coach using profanity that is overheard by fans, spectators, referees. It's not a free, secure time for them to say everything they want to say in colorful language. That's not appropriate. The NFHS is concerned about those things, and they address that in the point of emphasis. So if you are hearing that as an evaluator from the top row, and it's not being addressed through assessing a technical foul or having a conversation with that bench or that coach, then that's not proper enforcement of
So is that a technical, or you just go talk to the coach and say, come on, coach, you gotta keep it quiet?
I think it would depend on the situation, but it very well may be a technical foul depending on the severity of that conduct. If you hear, one word that's colorful, and you go and, hey, just a reminder, sportsmanship is a point of emphasis. I heard some colorful language. If you could please not do that moving forward. I really don't want to have to give you a technical foul, and kind of lay it out like that versus, here's your warning for misconduct and putting it in the book. So I think there's ways to address it diplomatically, but there's also a way to handle an egregious situation. They talked about players letting off steam. Again, you know, miss an easy bunny, a wide open layup, and you're like, ah, shit. That's different than the screaming the F word at the top of your lungs and everyone in the gym hearing it. That's not the image that we want in high school basketball. The NFHS wants us to enforce this POE and a player just letting off steam. Again, it's different than something under your breath versus something that everybody in the gym can hear. So kind of use that as a guideline. Issues with misconduct should be addressed back to association. I don't know what the specific policies are on that for the PNBOA, but
Talk to John.
that's the specific policy. Inform your assigner. Appreciate that. Great. Screening, illegal versus legal. I'm sure you've seen videos, you've looked through and know some of the criteria. Screening an opponent that's moving versus screening a stationary opponent. When time and distance is involved and when it's not. And that is, they didn't go into a lot of details other than make sure you know the details of that rule and follow it through. Same being true for footwork when it comes to jump stops, Euro steps, and spin moves. Those moves can all be completed legally, and we really just need to know when the offensive player has ended their dribble, knowing when the pivot foot, what is the pivot foot, and that they haven't replanted that back on the ground unless it's a jump stop and then they jump to shoot. So, Jeremy?
My worry with this, with the footwork emphasis, just so I'm clear, the emphasis is get better at finding the pivot foot and knowing the rules. It's not call more Travis.
Correct.
I believe the emphasis is on enforcement, accurate enforcement. That's the guidance that I read. And you know, hey, there's no way you can do that move legally, but you have to know that they traveled, not guessing that they traveled was
Right.
the thing. And I don't know that the NFHS has this language, but what is being said at the collegiate level is if you're not sure, that the benefit of the doubt goes to the offensive player having completed a legal move. But these plays, you really, you need to see them on video. You need to understand those concepts, and you know, it takes work to get better at identifying that, but they don't want it to become an issue where, you know, you're just calling travels and guessing on plays. You really want it to be an accurate point, so.
And if in doubt, it's illegal.
Yeah, the benefit of the doubt goes to that the offensive player has completed a legal move. Focus areas, and this is more for our organization. We want to, again, make sure that our officials are getting to the reporting area. They're not doing the collegiate walk and talk. They're getting their hand up to stop clock on out of bounds, not just pointing direction. Blocking foul, we are going blocking foul with open hands to the waist, not blocking foul with the fist. And then, again, fundamentally sound, using proper NFHS mechanics, and the signals that are in the book. So we don't want every referee having their own unique style and swagger. We really want a consistent look and appearance to our officials that follow that. So those are the focus areas and points of emphasis and rule changes from the NFHS. And that is the material that I had prepared. Are there additional questions? Yes,
So I just have one point of clarification. Last year, the shot clock in Washington is 30 seconds for both boys and girls basketball. Okay? So I guess next year, one of the rules in the book, in the back of the book, was they're trying to go to a 35-second shot clock, but for now, Washington, boys and girls, 30 seconds. And one other point of clarification, and I had a lot of calls this week and people taking the test, we still reset the clock back to 30 seconds on a kick ball. I think some college mechanics, it goes back to 20 maybe, but we're still 30 seconds on everything.
Hey Scott, on the shot clock, if we're doing lower level games and they don't have a shot clock, what are we doing?
There's no shot clock.
But that's not what WIA said.
Yeah, so the lower level games, when you're talking like junior high games,
I'm talking about like a C game when we're at Lake Washington in the auxiliary gym and they don't have a shot clock because they're on a portable scoreboard, but the portable scoreboard has a shot clock on it. Or they have a stopwatch, but they don't want to use it.
that's a really good question. Kevin?
If there's no shot clock in the game, you just play it, and,
Just
play
play.
the game with no shot clock, and you let John know. Typically, it's gonna be, like you said, a C-level game, or maybe they don't have, shot clock not working, they don't have a shot clock operator. But if you don't have it, try to get it, but if you don't have it, you just play it and tell John. It's not gonna happen at a varsity game, but at a lower level game.
Or JV game.
Or Metro game,
But just play it, tell John, he'll take care of it.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to talk about some of the stuff that we saw at camp, and Kevin and maybe Joanne, you can jump in here. For some reason, everybody thinks this is our new three-point signal, right? And we've tried to beat that out of them all year, that this is not. This is our three-point signal. I think this is what they do in the NBA. College doesn't even do this. So people that we've talked to said, well, you're going to have to, you guys are going to have to change. Well, no, you're going to have to change. So we need to make sure that we coach, train that, teach that when we follow up with our people in our pre-games. Some other things that we really saw is a hard time rotating this year for some reason. And Joanne, if you want to jump in, or Kevin, when they should go, when they shouldn't go, that was one thing. And then bailing out very quickly was another thing that we tried to work with officials.
That's a trail.
That's trail. So yeah, if you can just keep that in your mindset when you're doing your post games. Kind of talk about that. I don't know if you guys saw anything else.
Well, just with court positioning, I think, they don't understand, they're not mirroring the ball. So that puts them in a bad position. If you're mirroring the ball, you're already in close down, which helps your decision making. But if you're staying wide too often, because maybe you feel like you need a wider look, but mirroring the ball, I think, really will help the decision making and when to rotate.
Yeah. So we have 3 points as on the end line, right? It's not the baseline, it's the end line as lead. Wide out, close down, and pinch. In high school, we don't want to use the pinch. There's no reason for us to be there. So it's either close down or wide out. And that's what we really tried to teach. Kevin, did you have anything else that you saw in our camps, or?
No, I think the biggest thing is the bailout.
Yeah, the bailout.
Not just on the trail, from the center too. You see the shot go up and it looks like the guys, the defensive player's gonna get the rebound, but they don't. It gets bounced around, and we've already taken 2 steps down the court, and now we're slowly getting back to the scrum because we bailed out on it. So it's just a matter of telling everyone to stay. Once you see possession, then go. And I tell guys, you get beat, you're gonna get beat.
There you go.
Yeah,
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
But if you don't stay with the play, on the offensive end, and until there is actual possession, you're gonna get caught for something else, because that's what's going
And
to
I
happen.
think it's nice because it does address that more specifically on this new form too. So I think if you start to see a pattern in the evaluations, it's going to be people failing out. And we can make that accountable.
Yeah, and even on that form, one thing that, we don't do a very good job at 3-person picking up travels for some reason. Travel's a point of emphasis there, because I think these officials, they think they're going to learn 3-person mechanics their first year. It's not going to happen. You're not comfortable with that probably till a year and a half or 2 years later. But they're so busy focused on looking through and looking elsewhere that they forget to look down. So that's a good reminder for them not to get straight line or take a step up or step down so they can actually see that play. Another thing that we saw this year too is double dribble. When the guard gets the ball, control, put the ball on the floor, stop, turn around and move, and then they take off dribbling again. We don't pick that up. We need to do a better job at that. Okay?
Concentration.
Yeah.
To reiterate a little bit on the travel, rule is different. Collegiate is asking us to emphasize different things than high school. At literally every level of basketball, there's an emphasis on picking up the pivot foot.
Sure.
So if we're seeing officials who are consistently not finding the pivot foot, I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Before we all go, is we don't want you to put scores on the form when you hand it to the referees. One of the main reasons why we did the new form is because the referees would sit in the locker room and find out what box Bob checked on my form versus their form, and then we would spend the rest of the game, or the post-game, wondering why I got the second box and you got the first box. So we just dropped a really good basketball game, and now we're at each other because of a stupid box, okay? That's why we took the box off the form to try it, and that was the biggest complaint when we did a survey on evaluations. Why do we still have the scoring box? So that was one of the reasons why we did the new form. So when you hand them the white copy at the end of the day, you're going to have nice comments on there, but you're not going to give them a score at the point.
So
Okay?
no scores in the gray.
Yeah, no scores in the gray at the game site.
So they've got the two copies, right?
Right.
So you can open that up and write
Yeah.
your score for your own note-taking
Yes.
on the back end, close it back up as you're making comments.
That's where I was going.
Okay.
Because you're not going to maybe remember if you don't do
I
that.
was just gonna say.
But then at the end of the day, if we were going to give them a score, we're right back to, why did I get this? And why did you get that? We all worked, I think, a pretty even game. So we're trying to get rid of all of the animosity in the locker room towards observers and each other. So.
Again, I'm not as coordinated as everybody else. But you know, what I try and do is, there's so much stuff going on during the course of the game, I take extra notes for myself. Because sometimes once I get home, there's some things or even when I get in the locker room, I may have forgotten, so I take notes for myself. And I like the fact that I can go home and look at my additional notes and say, here's why I did something. And I can write the comments in there, but I can tell you, I mean, we're all getting a little older, we don't remember as much. So for me, I take extra notes, so that way when I'm home, when I'm look at those boxes, I'm specifically making a comment related to the score. Now, I don't do that for all of them, but I just try at least have about 4 or 5 things that I do once I get home, because I can't remember everything at the game.
No, and I agree, and I think most people do that. I've had evaluators take like 5 minutes, like Mike Partle was an example. He'll come in after about 5 minutes of letting us in there get, kind of calm down, and he'll come in with a notebook page for each of us that's over and above whatever was written on the form. Sometimes you even get a written Word document from certain evaluators. At 5:52 of the second quarter, you did this. All right, but that's not on the form.
Right.
So there's a lot more beyond the scenes, like you already mentioned, that we can do as an evaluators to help those officials get better. And that's really, well, let's face it, the reason why we have scores on an observation form is we got to have a rank order list at the end of the day, so we know who's going to state tournaments. Okay, but even more important than a list is getting our officials better, getting everybody to work on those things, like Jeff and Joanne just talked about, making them better referees, that making the game go better. So yes, we need scores, but we need training and feedback and all that good stuff too.
Okay, thanks.
I guess the biggest thing I see too with what we do is this is for varsity officials, and those varsity officials are teaching the other officials that they work with at different levels. So I just think the consistency and enforcement that we do is just gonna make the group better and hopefully eliminate some of the nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, I agree. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to. So another thing we're doing this year, I'm just going to give you a kind of an overview. This is going to be my speech to the membership tomorrow night. We're going from 5 observations that we've normally gotten, and we always got to throw 1 out. Okay, so you always get your lowest interpolated score thrown out of the system. Okay, we're not doing that this year. You're gonna get 3 in person, which you'll all be out doing. We're gonna get 1 video observation. Our goal as the observation committee is to get every varsity official on both the boys and the girls side 1 video observation. Logistically, we're still trying to figure that out. So you may be asked by Penny to, can you please do a review on this game and give me back the same form? But the best thing about that is it's not that harried mess of trying to watch 3 people in one game, write comments down, and giving them a productive, piece of paper. Now you can go back and review it and say, okay, I'm going to watch Scott this half, or this quarter, or Joanne, or Dan. Okay? Because we all know we're writing down something, and then you hear, ah! What happened? What did I miss? You don't have a clue what they just missed. Somebody could have punched somebody, and you missed it because you're right on the video. You're going to pick that up. So we're going to try to do that this year, and of course, not everybody's using the same medium. So the North Puget Sound schools, Kent Auburn schools, they use a thing called Just a Game Live. Some of the schools are using the I always get this screwed up, NFHS video. Okay, Metro's using something different, but the goal we're trying to do is to get Penny to be able to get these links. Okay, and I almost said tapes, links, and send them out to whoever she decides to use in that process. But that's what we're going to do this year. And back to Joanne's point, you may be evaluating some JV referees on half a game. So you may be assigned to get there and do 1 half of a JV game and then the varsity game. But you'll still use the same form. Okay? That could have taken me from the 2nd spot on the list to 25th spot on the list. Okay? So now, if you do 10 or more on either boys' side or girls' side, you're going to get 0.25 added to your final interpolated score. We're not going to pay you like we did a couple years ago, which was an administrative nightmare, and we can't afford it, number one. We're going to add points to your final score. So instead of, if I don't want to do 1 JV observation, I won't get penalized, but I get rewarded if I do it. So we're trying to take more of a positive approach instead of a penal approach. So that's all I got. I'm going to get off stage. What?
It's a great thought, and I'm an observer, I've observed this year, but I was thinking, why not have, I've seen Jeff's notes are great, you guys all probably do the same. Why not have them give the notes and comments, but then email us as referees these forms? Because I don't know you, I got evaluations from different years and all sorts of stuff. It might be an easier process than having to give everybody a sheet to fill it all out, because they can go home and think about it, and then email it out. We're kind of in a world now, this is kind of back the way it's always been.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. So let me think about that. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to say, then I'm going to get off stage. So if you guys have any ideas how we can make this better, either send them to Penny or myself. We're trying to get out of the the 19th century and do the things more technologically advanced type stuff. Any ideas you have that you think will make this program better, let us know. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, great. No, I just again, I really value this program from the bottom of my heart because it was impactful for me, and appreciate your work. And I know that some of you have no interest in doing the video evaluations. Some of you are eager and really thrive and want that. I love breaking down video, and I can always see more from that perspective, but I know we all land in different places, so it'll be important to communicate your true interest, and we can work through training and how we're going to facilitate that with technology. But I think that there's a great opportunity to evolve the program, and I'm happy to be involved with it. And I'm available to all of you through email, and you have my cell. Hopefully you can email me more rapidly than calling. I have a busy schedule, but I promise I will get back to you. And that's all I have. So thanks, everybody. Have a great season. Stay healthy. Travel safe. One last question.
So, 2 questions. Obviously, we're preoccupied. I got to do work for One is, as an official, am I supposed to know that, our evaluator's supposed to let me know that they're at my game before the game starts?
No.
Okay.
You should
No.
assume that they're always watching.
Okay.
You should assume every game he works evaluated.
Okay, and then two, so 2 years, 1920 was my first year in this association, but I've had over 20 years experience. I felt like, so statement to question, I felt like all the evaluations I got during a JV game, everyone assumed I was brand new and I didn't know anything. And those reflections were reflective of them not knowing me and not knowing anything about me and knowing that I was a newer official. Is there a way, because I think I should have had totally different evaluations and they should have been focusing on other things versus what I got on those evaluations. Is there a way for the evaluators to know how much experience?
No. So, and the other thing the evaluators don't know, they don't get a rank order list. They just get a alphabetical order of all of the varsity officials that they're going to go see. They used to be able to get the rank order list, which skews the system. So if somebody comes and watches me, and let's say I'm number 5, and I'm working with number 65 and 75, they're going to assume that I'm way better before the game even starts. And I'm going to get an advantage because they're number 75 on the list. They've got to be there for a reason. So we quit doing that. But there is no resume, if you will, Randy, to say, hey, he's been in 5 different associations, got 20 years of experience, 10 state tournament, whatever. We don't have that. I don't even know how to address that.
Okay, because there's already a skewed perspective anyway.
Yep.
If they know that these evaluators have been around, and I've already seen this guy twice this year, or I know it's somebody that's been in this association for a long time versus this is a brand new person, or, right? Because even when I was hearing from a JV game to a varsity game they were focusing on way different things.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and here's the thing to keep in mind. I think everyone should go into every evaluation, whether you're an evaluator at the varsity level or the registered level. You should look at everyone with fresh eyes and evaluate them on that performance and not their body of work or their history. So, if I stage the greatest comeback of all time and I'm vying for a state championship and I'm got to work my way up through the registered list, I'm going to be the best doggone registered official I can be. And if I'm not getting my hands up and big time in the game or whatever, I'm not putting the best foot forward, then I shouldn't be scored based upon my history. I should be scored on that performance. So I think that's probably the fairest way to go about it. Put your shine on, get your knees up, and show them what you can do out there.
I just have one quick comment too that again, and I didn't see it in this room, but I remember one time I reffed and we did, the evaluators for the JV, then we did the game, and the evaluator came in and he talked for about 45 minutes. It's a long time. Now we're all getting kind of tired, and I don't know if there's
Was that Elmer?
I know nothing. No. Anyway, it's just a comment that I don't know if you could. Again, this might get back to where you email the forms because you can come in with comments and walk out. But I don't know if there's some sort of time
Evaluation
limit.
should take no longer than 15 minutes. in a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah,
Okay?
if that.
Maximum. I think that's respectable. And understand too, like no evaluation process is perfect. And a brand new varsity official, first time being an evaluator of a registered official, they're going to have to hone that skill and that craft themselves. So, understand that it takes time to get there, and please be patient with it. And hopefully with how the averages and throwing out scores when we do, especially with JV, I mean, we take the top 8 or 10, and we have a
Depending
whole
on the year.
process. Yeah, depending on the year. So it is, if you have one outlier experience, hopefully you've gotten enough evaluations that it outweighs that. So, again, no process is perfect, but this is a pretty darn good one, and we keep trying to make it better. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just a quick comment. Everybody's picture is not always on there. So there are times, either a JV or varsity game, or if there's been a change, I may go down and ask the head
fine.
official, hey,
That's fine.
who are the individuals on your group, to make sure I have proper information.
I agree with that. We encourage them, and Chuck has come to meetings after meetings, said, hey, everybody, free picture, get it on the web. Every meeting, John says, get your damn picture in Arbiter, okay? And it still doesn't happen.
And not with your kids, right?
So So Joanne just asked me a question about when do we start the process this year. The first varsity games that will be evaluated will be on Monday, the 30th. I believe Monday's the 30th.
That was the 29th. It was my birthday. Monday's the
Oh,
29th.
it is 20, okay, so Monday the 29th. And back to his point earlier, the officials need to be prepared to get evaluated on their very first game. Will they? I don't know. But to try to get, because we have less evaluators than we have in past years, so to try to get everybody their prescribed number of evaluations, I'm sure there's going to be some people that get evaluated on game one.
I have a question for you.